Oregon Digital Media Center of Southern Oregon University and in partnership with the Ashland Independent Film Festival. Myself, Robert Arellano, a professor at SOU, am thrilled to welcome my old college classmate and friend and producer-director, Josh Gleason.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, studio audience. I forgot, we've got a whole studio audience here of students from SOU and friends from the community. We're thrilled. It's the opening day of the Ashland Independent Film Festival 2019, and Josh is here to present his brand new film, world premiere, that he co-directed and produced called True Believer. Josh, I wanted to take about 15, 20 minutes to just ask you a little about your career overall and look back on some of the paths that have taken you here to this day. But first and foremost, tell us about what brought you here. Welcome to Oregon. Is this your first time? And what is your impression so far arriving on the ground on the first day of AIFF 2019?
Sure, yeah. This is my first time here at the film festival. First time in Oregon, actually, first time. And it's very exciting. I've heard wonderful things about the festival, wonderful things about Ashland, and so far everybody has been incredibly welcoming, and I'm really excited to premiere the film here.
Great, and tell us a little bit about True Believer. I know we're going to get to see shortly the trailer for it, but set it up for us perhaps if you would, and just some of the process of creating this film.
Yeah, absolutely. So, this was a film that in the aftermath of the 2016 presidential election, my co-director and I, like a lot of people, noticed that there was a real surge of interest among people who had not previously been involved in politics, declaring that they were going to run for office for the first time, and feeling like people who were unhappy about how things had gone in the election and felt like they needed to get directly involved in the political process and to be able to make change or try to exert some of their own political interests. And so we were just really interested in kind of the experience, the lived experience of what it was like to get involved in the political process for the first time for a complete outsider who has, none of the institutional support, none of the training, and through that experience of following somebody through that process, what can we learn about the political process in our country through experiencing it with someone who is going through it for the first time. So we did an extensive search. We looked into I'd say over 50 candidates who we identified who were running for the first time, and really wanted to find someone whose candidacy was more nuanced and more complex than just a progressive saying like, I'm furious about Trump and Trump's message and Trump's policies, and I'm going to get involved, and sort of this is a very much a kind of reaction to Trump. We found a candidate who was very dismayed by Trump, but who was a little bit more complicated as a character. He was a Republican who felt like the party had drifted away from the party that he knew. So, and he had positions that kind of straddled both political parties. So, so we got involved in following his campaign and followed it for about 9 months.
And that's Rob, who I guess the best way to meet is perhaps through the trailer.
Yeah,
maybe
sure.
We should take a moment, ask if Charles, if you'd be able to give us the trailer, and then we'll come back and talk a little bit more about this once we've seen a glimpse of True Believer.
We're praying for our President of the United States, God, and Vice President Pence, God, that you will help them through this time of turmoil, God, that you will continue to be with them.
It's frustrating to me as a Christian to see evangelicals vote overwhelmingly for Trump.
I'm joined today by a Northwest Arkansas pastor named Rob Ryerson.
Hi there, I'm Rob, I'm running for Congress. I'm pro-gay rights, but I'm pro-life. I believe in smaller government, but I also believe in Medicare for all.
There is an absolute battle going on for the heart and soul of this country and the direction of this country.
Science, not silence!
Honey, I pray you win.
For me to be on the ballot, it costs $15,000.
You're getting really defensive. You've got to find that teaching voice.
And I want you to gain the confidence that comes from knowing that you are loved.
God is never on the side of the rich and powerful. God is always on the side of the oppressed.
God, we thank you for this journey. We pray that no matter what happens, that we would have a strong sense of your plan for us.
I don't have any idea if my version of Christianity is going to resonate with voters. We're going to find out.
That was great. That was the trailer to True Believer. And did you cut that yourself, Josh?
I cut it along with an editor.
Yeah.
Yeah, we worked on that together.
That's right. So what a perfect candidate out of over 50 that you might have had to choose from. You found the story here, and 9 months of a process of I'm sure pre-production as well as following. Rob, all around. Are you your own camera operator too?
No, I work with, I mean, there were a few different cinematographers, documentary cinematographers who shot the film. There was one primary one by the name of Tom Bergman, who was excellent. So it was a collaboration in the field.
And what's the process for a producer-director in a short documentary like this to actually put the story together? Do you sort of find the story in the midst of all following the action, the life of the character, the main centerpiece?
Yeah, I mean, this is, you know, verite filmmaking is a very rich, rewarding, complicated, and maddening and process because, you know, you have a sense of what the story is, or you have ideas about what the story is and what the story is going to be when you start following it. And of course, you make decisions about what you shoot, what you want to shoot. You know, we were traveling from New York City to Arkansas, so I would be regularly talking to Rob and, you know, asking him what's coming up, what's going on in the campaign, and making decisions based on that and based on what I thought was important to the storytelling to go shoot. And then I think inevitably most verite filmmakers would tell you the story that you thought you were going out to capture is not necessarily the story that is there. And you end up finding through the course of the filming and then especially in the editing room kind of where the story lies. So it's a interesting process. It's a difficult process. It requires you to be kind of supple, and you know you want to have ideas about what you're doing, but be ready to pivot and recognize that your idea of something is not necessarily the way it is.
This is just so exciting. It's really, I've been here 7-8 years for Ashland Independent Film Festivals now, and I feel like this is the perfect platform for this documentary to have its premiere. I know you're paired with another shorter doc, Inquiring Nuns, and the screenings are today at 12:40, tomorrow, Friday at 9:30, and then Monday, sort of at the closing out of the festival at 3:10 in the afternoon, all at the Varsity. And although I feel like a few of those screenings are probably sold out, folks who've attended AIFF in the past will know that you can rush, and if you show up a half an hour early, there's a chance you might get a ticket that gets freed up. So we hope to see you at one of those screenings, and you'll be able to say hello and meet Josh in person. If you don't mind me taking a few minutes to back up a little, 20 years or so when we first met, what were some of the first steps you took out of college? Because we've got a studio audience here of seniors in media and production. And do you have any reflections on what were some of those essential things looking back that made it possible for you to get your career started?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I think, one of the things that I would say is that it took some time. There was some wandering in the wilderness that happened. I knew I had an interest in media. I knew I had an interest in storytelling, specifically nonfiction storytelling, but I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do with that. And I actually started off as a public radio producer and reporter, and that came about through, I was living in Chicago at the time, and I did an internship at the public radio station there, which is a fantastic public radio station, and I was scrapping it together with temp jobs and, but I immediately loved that experience of being out in the world, with a microphone, engaging with people, strangers, and finding out about what they thought about things and about their lives. It was like, people talk about this. I definitely had this, one of those sort of magical kind of moments where you're like, wow, this feels right to me. This is what I want to be doing. But it took some time, to work myself into as a freelancer, first in public radio, and then ultimately transitioning into documentary and working in television for a while. And it's just recently that I've gotten the opportunity to work on some verite projects, which is what I've wanted to do for a long time. But it's a resource-intensive thing to do because it involves a lot of shooting. So what this is just the trailer. The film is 25 minutes long. We shot over 70 hours of footage.
Over 9 months, too.
Yeah, over 9 months. So, and when you're not living, for us, we were traveling back and forth between Arkansas. We probably made like a dozen trips to Arkansas. So it's a resource-intensive process. But, so one thing I say to people when people do sometimes come to me or starting out in their careers and asking for advice is that, it takes time to find your way sometimes, and to find what you love, and to find an outlet for doing what you love, and for you to be able to express yourself creatively in the way you want to. It's not an immediate process, and oftentimes you have to work your way to it. So.
Yeah. And were there any mid-career pivots or opportunities that you found were essential to go through a door, sometimes that didn't feel like the right one, but that nevertheless led to the next thing? Always interested in hearing that, just personally as well as for some students thinking about that.
Yeah, I mean, there was, when I switched from radio to documentary, I started out working on historical documentaries, which is not something that I had. It was not something I had a specific desire to do. I didn't go to historical documentary because I really wanted to make historical documentaries, but I went to it because there wasn't the kind of stories that I wanted to tell on public radio. There were very few outlets and ways to tell them. Now it's a totally different universe with podcasting. This is like in the pre-podcasting, like dark ages, where there was just like one radio station in town, and there were a certain number of shows on that radio station. So I went to work in historical documentary also because I wanted to work on longer form stuff. And at the time, there weren't a lot of opportunities in radio to do pieces that were, the standard radio piece is like 4.5 minutes if you're doing something for one of the NPR news magazines or something. And so I wanted to do stuff that was more in-depth. But so I did work in historical documentaries for a little while, and that ended up, I learned I learned filmmaking through that process. Aspects of filmmaking process through that process, and that helped me along the way. But it was a pivot, and it was unclear at the time, where it was going to lead. But it helped along the way.
Great. And now, just as a kind of way of leading back into the Ashland Independent Film Festival, and I hope you have a wonderful time, 5 days here on the ground in Ashland. What do you feel like might come next after this premiere? Does the promotion begin to have a life of its own for a doc like this? Are there other festivals that you'll have to travel to? How does social media and the new media landscape relate to how you and Sarah Colt Productions find audiences for these stories?
Yeah. I mean, our hope, we have submitted the film to other festivals. So our hope is that we can have a festival run with the film, and then find some sort of online home for it, where people can stream it. I should say there's a growing interest right now in short form documentary, and it's a great way for people who are interested in making documentary to sort of get their foot in the door and to start to work in the medium, and it's far less expensive than making a whole feature documentary. So you could have something that's fairly contained, where you do maybe a few days of shooting or something, and if you have a great idea and you can capture something great, you can make a really nice short documentary and possibly get some attention for it and get it in wonderful festivals like Ashland. So that's something that's fairly recent that I think is good for people who are just starting out to be aware of, that shorts are really, there's a lot of interest right now from a lot of places in shorts, and there's a lot of creativity, a lot of innovation in the form that's going on in the short form. So, but yeah, we hope to continue to play at festivals, and it's, I think it's an important story. Hopefully, it's a story that we were never interested in making a film that was preaching to the choir, so to speak. We wanted to make a film that revealed things that were maybe unfamiliar to a lot of the documentary viewing audiences, and to tell a story that hopefully changes the way that they think about certain things, or provides a more nuanced kind of perspective on things.
Cool. And shortly we're going to have to whisk you away to that first screening of the 3 screenings happening at this festival. But before we do that, can you give us a few minutes on what are you working on now? What's the next production? I know you never sleep at Sarah Colt Productions, and what have you got working on in production or pre-production now?
Yeah, if you like sleep, production is not the field for you.
Nope.
But we are have been working for the past almost 2 years on a verite feature project, which is an exploration of the struggles of the American middle class today. And the way that we're telling that story is not through talking heads and facts and figures, but we have been following the lives of 3 individuals working in very different industries, living in very different parts of the country. So there is a displaced factory worker in Rust Belt, Ohio, who we followed through his layoff from a 3M sponge manufacturing plant, through his attempts to retrain and reinvent himself and keep his family together, now making half of what he used to make before. There's a 5th-generation farmer in Kansas who, as small-scale family farming has become almost impossible to make a profit doing it, he is in danger of losing the family land that he feels this deep obligation and responsibility to continue on, not unlike many farmers in his position right now. I mean, there's actually a real crisis going on in rural America amongst small-scale farmers. And over the course of us following him, he received a cancer diagnosis, and we followed him through that treatment process. And then the third subject that we're following is lives in Tampa, Florida. It's a woman who had worked in the mortgage industry for 18 years, lost her job in the crash, started driving for Uber and Lyft, and has seen over the course, she was an early kind of adopter, and over the course of driving for those companies, they have cut the rates that they pay to drivers, the percentage of the ride they pay to drivers, several times. So what was once something that she was actually able to make a decent living at is barely sustainable anymore. And she has actually recently turned, in this kind of leap of faith, to this multi-level marketing scheme, this apparent pyramid scheme as like a way out. So these are 3 very different stories, but they're united thematically by this idea, by sort of the struggles of the American middle class, the decline of unions, and the erosion of wages all come into play in all of their stories. So we're interweaving those stories together to kind of create sort of kaleidoscopic portrait of where the middle class is in America today.
Well, and to a feature verite doc, and
Yes.
so many interesting stories, and all over the map. You're doing a lot of traveling.
Yes.
We'll look
Yes.
out for more information about this
Yes.
on Sarah Colt Productions and your social media, which
Please.
I know, that sounds great. I can't wait for it. Josh, I'm looking forward to today's screening, and we're going to head over there shortly. It's at 12:40. On Friday, it's also 9:30, and Monday at 3:10, all at the Varsity Theater, True Believer. And we're going to enjoy this premiere here in Ashland this week. And in the meantime, we're looking forward to having you back here anytime in the Southern Oregon Digital Media Center and Southern Oregon University, home of the exciting new digital cinema major, as well as emerging media and digital arts. I just want to take a moment to thank our ASL interpreter. Also thank Keegan and Charles in the studio for putting this together today. And once again, welcoming Josh Gleason to the Ashland Independent Film Festival. Looking forward to True Believer, and hope you have a wonderful time in town today. Thank you for joining us.